Did you just ask me if the Bible is older than Twilight?
Whatever! They're both geriatric.
Okay, well, first of all, what's so bad about being old? Okay, what are you? Ageist?
No. I'm not being ageist.
And your profile picture, you are culturally
How
appropriating.
am I culturally
You are
appropriating?
clearly wearing a bindi when you are not of Indian descent.
It's not a bindi. Okay, I had a zit on my forehead that was a little inflamed. Sorry,
No.
sue me, all right? Just, you know what? Not everyone can afford fancy skincare like you millionaires. Okay, Mr. Wall Street, Mr. Jordan Belfort, Fiji water ass. All right, you know what? Actually, it's a little classist of you to even assume
Hey,
that.
sorry, hate to interrupt, but my new song Slam Dunkin' on her donut just dropped, so make sure to click the link and pre-save, okay? Hashtag SoundCloud rapper, hashtag fire, hashtag... Yeah. I'm not listening to that. Yeah, me neither. Well, you guys agree on one thing.
Something that I've noticed more and more recently is people projecting, like, a lot, right? And they can take something, no matter the context, and somehow make it revolve around, themselves and their own experiences and issues. You could post something that is completely innocent and does no harm in your eyes, but it will do harm to someone out there. And don't get me wrong, a lot of the times people do say something that is offensive, even if they didn't mean it to. And that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be educated or, called out in a way to make them aware of, why what they said was wrong. However, I do find that some of these cancelable offenses are becoming more and more of a stretch. For example, I saw a TikTok comment attacking the original poster, saying that him getting good grades was classist. Yeah. Or there was another TikTok that said, why is it so normalized to stop drinking during pregnancy? If you don't want your baby to have disabilities, isn't that a little ableist? And I'm not trying to sound like an old geezer that's just like, people these days are so sensitive.
These blue-haired libs are always so sensitive.
But I do think that some people need to realize that the world cannot revolve around your triggers. Of course, I believe people should be accommodating and cognizant of other people's feelings, but at the same time, it's impossible to monitor how every single person is gonna be feeling about one thing you say that you aren't saying with malicious intent, especially when these people are strangers. And not everyone deserves to be canceled or attacked because you in particular found something offensive. Honestly, sometimes I'm actually quite impressed by people's abilities to make things about themselves when the original post literally had nothing to do with them and was clearly not meant to be offensive. I'm like, did y'all take a class for this or something? Because it seems like you're going for your PhD, for your master's.
Hello, students. Welcome to How to Be Offended 101 with a focus on the online hellscape. Now, today we will be focusing on how to think outside of the box, right? Why don't you grab your notebooks? Wrong! Come on! I just gave you an easy opportunity to be offended, and you guys did not catch on at all.
You just asked us to pick up our notebooks.
Which is made of murdered trees. This earth is actively deteriorating, and you just participated in an activity that promotes deforestation. Greta Thunberg would be so disappointed in you right now. She would beat you both with a sustainable bat.
I don't think she would do that. She seems like a nice girl.
All right, clearly, you guys need some guidance. Okay, so I'm just gonna give you some simple statements, and you know what? I'm gonna give you guys a chance to figure out how exactly to interpret it as offensive, okay? I just bought a new piano.
That's racist.
How?
Because you're Asian and therefore contributing to the stereotype that Asians play piano.
Okay, all right. That's a good start.
Would this actually be a good time to mention that my grandfather died from a grand piano crushing him while he was walking down the street, and then me, as a 7-year-old, had to drag his limp, lifeless body 17 blocks to the nearest hospital, and my mom was there but couldn't help because she said her arms were too sore from cutting fruit, and as I was dragging his lifeless body, his pants were actually scraping against the concrete and were being dragged down, so they ended up being at his ankles, and I just had to drag him with his bare ass on the concrete, and he was dead upon arrival to the hospital, so
it would be a perfect time to mention that.
Okay, great. Yeah. Silver lining of that situation, I guess.
All right, okay. What about this? I found a cure for cancer.
You're contributing to Big Pharma, which has inflated the price of insulin to the point where my grandmother couldn't afford it anymore and she died, and so you therefore indirectly murdered my grandma. I'm personally religious, and if someone gets cancer, that's God's will, and who are you to mess with God's will?
See, now, there we go. All right? You guys are finally getting the hang of it. All right, now your homework assignment is to start 5 arguments with random posts on Twitter and make it in MLA format.
Another thing I've noticed about being chronically online is that there is this pressure and expectation for people to be speaking up about certain issues, especially socio-political ones. And nowadays, because of how online everybody is, if you don't post about something, people just assume that you don't care. And believe it or not, empathy exists outside of Twitter, right? Empathy happens outside of the screen. Sometimes, you know. Just because someone doesn't make a post about something doesn't necessarily mean that they just don't give a shit. You know, there was discourse about people with a platform staying silent on certain topics, and a lot of people feel that those with a platform should speak up about certain things and even have the responsibility to do so. Although I do understand the expectation for those with a platform to be speaking up because the amount of reach that they have, you know, could really make, you know, a difference. At the same time, I also understand if that particular person or influencer or celebrity, whoever, does not feel educated enough to be speaking about something, or has simply not formed an opinion yet and is still absorbing the information from the news or like actual, you know, politicians and like people who like know what the hell is going on. And because of this idea that like not posting about something equates to not caring, it's just had this trickle down effect to the point where now we have Cheez-Its Twitter account tweeting something like, "Separate church and state, #girlboss." Like, what? You know, I think we do need to keep in mind that these people are not politicians, right? You know, sure, this TikToker might have 10 million followers, but they're also 17 and probably don't know the ins and outs of the socioeconomic status of the world.
So, I mean, you have been taking over everyone's For You pages. I mean, you're a TikTok sensation.
Well, no, I'm not really a sensation per se.
I know,
but-
it's just in the script. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about how you got into lip syncing?
Well, you know, I guess it just came naturally to me. You know, I have a mouth and, you know, I can move it. And I don't know, I guess I just garnered an audience because, well, I'm hot. So.
That's wonderful. What are your thoughts on the opioid crisis in America?
The opioid crisis?
Yes, we've noticed that you haven't spoken up about it on any of your platforms, and your millions and millions of followers are just wondering what you think.
What I think about the opioid crisis?
Do you have any proposals on how to solve this epidemic?
I'm sorry, what exactly is an opioid?
It's like a narcotic.
Okay, yeah, narcotic. That's like being a narc and idiotic at the same time. I personally don't have any experience with that, so.
Okay, let's just move to the next question. What are your thoughts on the political state of Hong Kong?
I think it's great.
Really?
No. I meant to say that it's awful.
Is that your final statement?
I guess.
All right, well, there you have it. This concludes our pre-interview with Miss TikTok Sensation before she takes the stage at the UN.
Wait, I'm speaking at the UN? Well, that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching today's video. And you know what? If you're chronically online, maybe that's not a bad thing because it means that you're more likely to watch my videos. So, everything is okay if it benefits me. And with that, I bid you adieu. Okay. You know, sometimes, I don't know why I feel awkward sometimes